The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine.
Yep.
Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
Oh, and this is Peyton Jones screwing around in the background because that little pop-up comes up, says "Got it," and I just think what's the movie Polar Express where they're like hot, 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 we got it, hot, hot. So it's in my head.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So you have to be in my head. I'm realizing, over the last few years, I've worked on different teams.
I don't have to be in your head. I don't have to be anywhere I don't want to be.
I've been lucky, man. When I worked at NAM, I worked with like Mac Lake and Charles Campbell, Rick Duncan, some amazing dudes. And then I forgot someone. Sorry, dude, I forgot. And then, I went from there to work with Exponential where, getting to work with Todd Wilson was pretty cool. He's fun to watch. Pretty genius dude. And then now I'm on this Through the Word team. And, over the past few years, I've been lucky to not always be the smartest guy in the room. And I was just kind of musing on that yesterday. Like, how cool is that? I'm surrounded by people I respect and am learning from. And to me, on the Strength Finder as a learner, that's a big deal, right? Well, I keep laughing with this guy named Brooks who worked at Exponential, who's going to come over and work for New Breed. He and I are always joking. Yesterday, I sent him a text saying, "I dropped this in the meeting today. Where may I learn this power? Not from a Jedi." And when I dropped that, I thought it was comedic gold. Nobody in the entire call actually got it or cared. It just went Star Wars reference right over their head. And, I live for moments like that, Pete. When those happen, I'm so happy. But welcome to the podcast. That was like the preamble to the Constitution right there. We believe that all men are created equal. No. Get to the point. What are we doing here?
So to keep this a high quality podcast,
which it is, obviously, because
100%. After 444 episodes, there could perhaps never be a better Christian podcast than this one. I got my dog spayed on Sunday.
Hey, real quick before you get into that, I just want to make a new tagline.
Look at the cone.
Whoa! Hey, my dog had a cone last week on too.
My dog is chewing her cone, and I'm like, ooh, that thing ain't going to last but maybe a day, 2 days more.
How can it chew its own cone? Isn't that the purpose of the cone, to keep it from chewing anything?
It's got the seam. She went after the seam.
No way. You got to move the seam up at the top of the head.
Oh, it doesn't stay up there.
Yeah. You can clip it to the collar?
Well, the whole thing, yeah. I mean,
take one of those potato chip bag things. Hey, welcome to the podcast, the highest quality recording. We give you life hacks. And what I was about to say, our tagline is that all your sanctification done for you in an hour-long audio clip. Who know that the best Christian podcast ever
done for you? I love
done
that.
for you in an hour clip. You can work out while you're getting sanctified. It's amazing. It's like jazzercise in the 80s when they put
if you're
praise
working
in it.
out to this podcast, you're not actually working out. This is not like Eye of the Tiger.
That's true. You need to listen to the Deftones if you want a real workout. But here's the thing.
Eye of the Tiger. Forget Deftones.
That's true.
Eye of the Tiger.
That's true.
On repeat.
I can't listen to that. And they should ban it from gyms because when I do that and I'm bench pressing, I throw the weight. I throw the barbell like 20 feet up in the air.
And
I get too excited. Yeah, and then I catch it. I catch it with my feet, though, and then I do reverse squats with it.
What's awesome is that's 315 pounds that you throw 20 feet up in the air.
Yeah, I do. I've broken ceilings that way. So Eye of the Tiger, I can't listen to it when I'm working out.
I dig it. But my poor dog with her cone of shame. She doesn't know how to use the doggy door with the cone of shame. So she just cries.
My dog. So this is the funniest thing. This is such an illustration of living by fear, like living in fear. My dog puts a cone on. Now she's 13 years old. She's from Wales. She's a little senile. Yeah, she had it on because she was chewing herself, nonstop in her paw. She had an infection. And the more she chewed it, the worse it got. So put this cone on her. And this dog would look at everything she didn't want to hit, like because she was afraid with the cone on. Well, of course, as soon as she looks at it, she catches on it. So she'd move around and every angle, every door, every opening, every item, she'd catch the cone on it. It was a comedy of errors because she's afraid out of the corner of her eye. She's like, well, I don't want to hit that. So she's looking at it to avoid it. And the cone snags on it. So my dog was like a pinball going through a pinball machine, just moving down the hallway.
And the lesson from this, children, is be careful what you focus on.
Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith. Do not look to the left or the right. There are a million ways you could go as a gospel preacher. And you can tell where I've been. I'm in through the word right now doing Gospel John. I am having the time of my life. When I was a church planner, I had to do everything else. I didn't have time to do things like my bookkeeping. That's why I called Simplified Church, Pete.
What? Who's this?
SimplifiedChurch.com. They will take care of all
commercial done now. Look at you.
All your bookkeeping needs, all of your IRS tax compliance. It just naturally led into it. But I didn't have time. So go to SimplifiedChurch.com. But I didn't have time to actually do like the word. When you're like in an established church, you're a sermon factory. I didn't have that time as a planner. So it was like, it was just a whole different animal. And now I get I'm paid to just labor in the word and prayer, I guess. But man, everything feels so different to me right now. I'm in it, and it's right. It's right. I'll get into that later. But
my parents really like your church plantology book because they're buying copies for pastors and giving them out.
It is a fine book, Pete Mitchell. It is a fine book.
What I loved is they're like, you remember Mark Mitchell? He's a pastor at CPC. Well, he's retiring, so we're giving him the book. So I guess they're basically telling people, hey, now that you're out of church, why don't you go plant one?
Nice. See, I love the way your parents think, dude. That's so rad. Because your dad was like this planner. He was bivocational. He is your client, right? For the Bible.
He was bivocational. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was bivocational back when it wasn't cool to be bivocational.
Yeah, when other pastors
it was probably seen as it was seen probably as like a failure. Oh, what do you mean you're bivocational? Back in the day, that was kind of how it was.
When you and I started this, it was still seen that way. 8 years ago, when you and I started talking, 8 years ago, it was still seen as and over the last few years,
you can't get a real church. You can't get a real someone to hire you. Yeah.
Yeah. We were given apologetics for it when we first started this. And now it is considered those are the people to watch. Those are the people to invest.
But only in certain communities. The communities, the circles that you and I travel in, it is.
Missional circles. Yeah.
But when you're talking about old school, church denominations, it's still not seen that way.
That's true. That's true. Well, I haven't stabbed myself in the leg. I haven't really done anything of note.
I love that you took out your own sutures.
I did. And I was laying in bed that night. Oh, look at that. Missed one. Gotcha.
I don't know what my dog is doing.
Well, I can't hear. It's not like when our dogs are barking.
She's got the ball in her mouth. And the funniest thing is because
how in the heck did she do that?
When she loses the ball, like it's behind the cone, before her feet, she goes crazy because she can't. Where did it go? It disappeared.
I feel like quoting John, we're going to need a bigger cone. That cone's too small. If your dog can pick up a ball with that cone, the cone's too small.
Did you ever see Spaceballs?
I have never seen that.
Really?
I've never. Put it up there with Commando. Put it up there with. Oh wait, no, I did see Commando. No, what's the one I didn't see with the? Is it Commando?
Predator.
I
actually rewatched Predator the other day because it's on
without me.
It's on Amazon or Prime or whatever it is.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it with Andrea because Andrea loves it. She's like, I can't believe you haven't seen that.
What?
Andrea loves Predator,
and you've never seen it?
And I've never seen it.
Yeah, I see. I don't know what to say because you and I are so different on our
no.
Taste.
That's not.
I don't know.
No, I'm shocked at myself for never having seen that. You have to understand. I saw every other Arnold movie. I just never got around to that one. It's weird. All my friends were into it. And I don't remember
Total Recall with Arnold.
Of course. Love that movie. Like, I probably saw that 3 times in the
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Get ready for a surprise, dude. No, you got to understand. I'm an Arnold. The Running Man. Come on. Like, dude, Arnold was.
Get to the Brubaker Hotel.
Hi, I'm Johnny Cab. Dude, that movie was that movie was a bit weird when they went underground.
That movie was not good.
Mutants,
it was just like at the time.
Oh. At the time, it was. I remember watching it. The spaceships, it was pretty cool, man. That scene at the end though, where their claymation eyeballs roll out, like that's pretty weird. Yeah. Even by 80s standards, you're like, dude, those are like claymation eyes. What was up with that? It's clearly a model. Yeah,
that was a funny movie.
I'm trying to think of what. Oh, so dude, I do have to say this. So we have to talk movies. So I saw Snake Eyes.
Oh, good. What'd you think?
I was impressed.
Didn't you kind of think, wait, who's Snake Eyes? Like, because he was like not the good guy through most of the movie.
I was a little bummed at that, but I'm like,
and the other guy was the good guy, and I was like, what? Like
in the original lore, those two guys are brothers, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Even
real brothers?
Overwatch. Yeah, even Overwatch, they did these two characters, Hanzo and Genji, and they're two brothers, and they're riffing off the old Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes relationship. Two Asian guys from Japan, same clan, went 2 separate ways. So, but I liked this take. I saw the trailer, and I'll confess. Now, you guys got to know, I have a Snake Eyes tattoo on my arm, and not knowing there was a movie going to be coming out, like to me, it was rad. I call it my secret nerd tattoo. To me, if you're going to be a nerd and you're secret about it, that's always to me cooler. Because
what I thought was funny is of all the things we've talked about for the last 8-9 years, I had no idea that Snake Eyes was important enough to you to get a tattoo of him until after you got the tattoo.
You got to understand. See, like when I was a kid, there were 3 toys in my life. So the original G.I. Joe was like when I was a kid, like toddler age, the G.I. Joe with like the fuzzy afro beard, and you pull the string in his back and you go, 1 for all and all for one, that was the first G.I. Joe I knew. And he was like Ken doll size, right? So then Star Wars comes out. Every toddler had like Fisher Price and crap like that, but Star Wars toys came out, took the toy market by storm, like changed everything overnight. Well, then I can't remember which company it was, because I think Kenner was Star Wars, and I don't know if Hasbro was G.I. Joe. I think it was Hasbro. Then they release G.I. Joe. And they're super bendy, like, multiple points of articulation, because that was a big thing with G.I. Joe. Eddie Murphy was talking about, I want G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. He's talking about what he'd asked for at Christmas. Well, so all of a sudden G.I. Joe comes and they bend like the Star Wars figures had 5 points of articulation, and they didn't bend at the elbows or knees. All of a sudden, G.I. Joe comes, they bend at the ankles, they bend at the knees. They have this rubber band that always break, and then your figure would bust apart at their torso and stuff. But they were superposable. But they invented this whole, like, that was the thing that was happening, is they would invent a backstory around the toys just to sell toys, to jump on the bandwagon. So if you've ever seen the toys that made us on Netflix, the funniest one is Masters of the Universe. So that was my third line. These are my three loves of my childhood. But He-Man, the guys go into a meeting and they're trying to get a contract, and they said, like the toy maker, the people they need to contract with. He says, oh, yeah, well, that's because we're going to make a comic for it. Because the guy goes, well, no one knows who He-Man is. And he goes, we're going to make a comic. And the guy goes, oh, you are? That's awesome. And so they go away and they go, oh, crap. When they get out of the meeting, we got to make a comic book now about He-Man. So they quick do that. They go in then the next meeting and they go, yeah, we're just not sure, there's a comic because it comes with the figure. Is that going to be in it? And then he goes, oh, no, they'll totally want the comic because they're going to see the cartoon. And the guys go, whoa, you guys have a cartoon? Yeah, we got a cartoon. So they come out and they go, crap, now we got to make a cartoon, which is, if you ever watch the old He-Man, it's the same scenes done over and over and over with like original scenes for the story popped in. So but yeah, man, like Snake Eyes was like the Boba Fett of the Star Wars world. He was just uber cool. And every kid fought. If there was one Snake Eyes figure, everybody fought over him. If multiple Snake Eyes came to the sandbox, an argument broke. I get to be Snake Eyes. No, I'm Snake Eyes. No, I get to be Snake Eyes. You be Snake Eyes' evil twin. So that's why they brought out Storm Shadow. It was because you needed an evil Snake Eyes to play against, because everybody wanted to be Snake Eyes. So this tattoo on my arm represents the Ninja Clan, which Church Planning Ninja, Ministry Ninja, yada, yada, plus my childhood, plus Snake Eyes was just the coolest. If I got a Boba Fett tattoo, everyone would know. They'd be like, yeah, it's cool. But I love the fact that this tattoo actually was, not a lot of people knew it. So I got to be honest, when the Snake Eyes movie got announced, I was a little bummed.
Oh, really?
I was a little like, I liked it being obscure. Just a nod to my childhood. Now that there's a movie, but I don't think anybody's seen that movie. I don't think that movie does well. So
I saw it.
It might still be good, for the old tattoo. But yeah, dude.
Interesting.
Want to hear my Hobbit story? No, I'm just teasing.
No.
So
did you hear that the rumor is after season 3 of The Mandalorian, it's canceled? And then the next rumor is, well, they're going to have a definite end and they're just going to rename it something else and continue on with the characters. So now it's it's either ending after season 3 or
I can see that though,
or they're going to transition it to something else.
I can see that because we started watching.
It'll be called Mandalorians.
Dead. We started watching Walking Dead season 11. And
is that the new one?
Yeah. And, Andrew's over it. She's like, I've kind of lost interest. And I'm like, no.
I think it's so much better than the other seasons so far.
Dude, I'll tell you this. I liked last season. Andrew hated it, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Even remember last season.
When they met that crazy chick, I was like, okay, the show just got good. She's rad. She's my favorite character.
Princess.
So, yeah, she's the best. So, but yeah, so, Mandalorian, I could see them stitching it up, I don't think they need to keep it going. I think sometimes you have a good show. Like I just watched the end of Clone Wars last season. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Amazing artwork.
We're watching The Bad Batch, and I think we're halfway through it.
I'm bored of that.
Yeah.
I find that boring. Yeah, but I do got to say, and I got bored partway through the Clone Wars.
And we've been watching Turner and Hooch every Friday when a new episode comes out. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
My kids finally like dogs. When we had Lucy and Ricky, they didn't like them because they were old.
Right.
But Zoe, they love. So now they're like, oh, look at that dog. He's so cute.
So I watch the dumbest things. Sometimes I'll put my kids down at night and we do funny video. And my youngest daughter, she's 8. She likes, I can't even remember his name, like Topi or something. It's like this little Welsh corgi. And it's like The Garden Party was the one we watched the other night, where she's wearing a little hat. She's stealing apples out of an orchard. And it's just these people going around filming their dogs doing stupid things. And I'm literally stupider for watching these. Like they're so bad. And it is pure love that I'm about to make a really terrible biblical comparison that's almost blasphemous for me to make, so I won't make it. But it is pure love that causes me to put one foot in front of the other. I literally just have to just endure through these dumb videos.
Have you seen Billy Madison?
Yeah.
See, you reminded me of that line at the end when he gives the book report on the little puppy that could, or something like that. And he goes, at no point in your rambling, incoherent dialogue. Did you have anything of value to say? May God have mercy on your soul.
I think I was just right there. I was getting lost in my own head.
And Billy Madison's like, a simple wrong would have done.
That's rad. That's so rad.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyway.
You'd be happy to know I work with a guy where that is his favorite film. Well, and Joe Dirt.
Well, going back to Spaceballs, the reason why I was asking that in high school, in high school, one of my buddies and I think we were working on a science project. We must have seen that movie 50, 60 times, but we saw the television version of it because we recorded it, back in the VHS days. We recorded it, and the TV version to me was funnier than the real version because they edited out all the profanity.
Yeah.
And it just made it so stinking funny. And John Candy's in it, right?
Yeah.
And his name is
Chewbacca.
Well, his name is Barf.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's your full name? Bartholomew. It's just like stuff like that. Just comedic gold. Oh my gosh. It's absolutely hilarious.
I need to see that.
I thought he had the Schwartz. He got the upside. I got the downside. There's two sides to every Schwartz. It's just
gosh,
stuff like that. It's just a hilarious movie, man.
I remember the stormtroopers come in the sand. That was pretty funny.
Yes, they cut out the profanity when they got to the.
I figured.
Yeah, but it's a funny movie, man. It's really funny.
Yeah, I need to watch it.
He was too late with it. Mel Brooks. He should have done it. Probably 10 years earlier. Closer to when Star Wars actually came out. I mean, it was too late, but still, it was funny.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder how he got away with doing that without getting sued. Was it the same studio, do you think?
I don't know. Do you think? I mean,
maybe.
Was it? It was clearly changed enough.
Yeah. As Rick Moranis as the short Darth Vader, that's pretty funny. Because when I'm watching the Clone Wars,
or there's a scene where they're looking on the radar in their version of the Star Destroyer, and all of a sudden he's like, "What is that?" And he takes his finger across the screen, and he's like, "We've been jammed." It was like they launched a big bottle of jam on the radar.
No way.
There's only one person who'd have the nerve.
It's a movie of dad jokes.
Oh, it was such a good movie.
I love it. Wow, weren't we talking about Top Secret? Because Andrea saw a clip of Top Secret.
It's been a long time since I've seen Top Secret.
We watched the Val Kilmer thing that's on
I couldn't,
Amazon.
Man. I started it and I was like, I can't watch it because I remember him as Iceman, and it's not Iceman anymore. I can't do it.
It's a good movie. They start off and they kind of portray him as really weird and eccentric. And granted, he is a little weird and eccentric. But they kind of, the way they mix it at the beginning is kind of to grab your attention. He's actually more down to earth than what they originally, it was a good movie, but they show a scene from Top Secret, and Andrew's like, "What is that?" And I'm like,
she's never seen Top Secret,
right? I told her that movie was the best. Like, it was so good. We as kids, there was a couple movies like that. There was that one, Johnny Dangerously, and then Naked Gun came out when I was in high school. And
I couldn't see Naked Gun because it had the word naked in the title.
Of course you couldn't. Yeah, no, there was more than just that in it.
That one I've hardly ever seen. Like I'm sure I've seen it, but it wasn't like one I repeated over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that with kids at my youth group and realized at a certain point, like we were all in the youth group together, we're like, okay, this is probably a mistake,
Dude, when I was at Biola, we had a karaoke night, and I don't even know why we had karaoke night, but we did. So we're all in the student union, and someone decides that they're going to do karaoke of Baby Got Back. You don't realize how bad that song is until you're singing it in front of a room full of Christians, and you're like,
"This is why youth need youth pastors."
They literally were like, "We're going to stop this song right here," because you don't realize how bad it is. Because it was, Sir Mix-a-Lot. Anyway,
that's pretty funny.
But yeah, no one realized it until we're like, wow, man, that's
remember we did the Bible Inner Circle, and there would be these like epic rap and hip hop conversations that would pop off in there. Those were the best.
Dude, somebody, I think it was Cam Barber, is that his name?
Yeah.
I think he was the one that like went off and did Ice Ice Baby, like the whole thing.
Are you serious? He was a new breeder. Actually, he was one of the first new breeders, funny enough, in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't tell you this, but before we get into our topic, new breed, we're actually changing quite a bit. We're going to stop being.
You talked about it on the last podcast.
See, I don't know who I talked to about what. I talk so much smack, Pete, not just on the podcast.
You need to start taking some of that stuff that Don Stoner was saying that helps your memory. Because let me tell you,
green tea
is going. Yeah, the green tea stuff.
I'm telling you, brother, I do need something. I'm feeling it. Ever since I had COVID, man, I have not been the same. I will tell you that.
That's actually some of the long-lasting effects of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, it was no joke. Like when I got it, my mental capacity changed. My early morning energy changed.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff changed. Now, I will say over time, we say long-lasting. COVID's only been out for 2 years. But the reality is some of it's coming back. I am starting to notice some of the stuff that I've lost is returning. What was I just saying?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention.
Just joking. All right. So, hey, kick us in, Doc Brown.
Great Scott. It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
So what is our topic? You were going to tell me before we started, and then we went off on something else.
Hey, why break our streak now? So our topic is actually celebrity culture and leadership. We were talking about the obviously, if you have not been living under a rock, then you've come across the Mark Driscoll Who Killed Mars Hill podcast. The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill is what it's actually called, but I call it usually about 2 or 3 other names first. And that's usually because that's what you do. You know, when there's another dude in the picture, you know, oh, what's his name? Mark, what's his name? No, his name's Matthew. Yeah, whatever. Right. That's what you do. So that's the real reason Pete and I are putting the podcast on hold, is because we found that everyone else liked this other podcast
better,
more than us. So we just,
hey, I just want to go on the record again and say, you're the one putting the podcast on hold.
That is true. So I'm mad. No, I'm teasing. No, but you know, it's been, I've had mixed feelings about that podcast. And on one hand, I think it's one of the best produced things out there. On the other hand, they are raising many, many things that need to be said. And on the other hand, you know, these are all my points. I don't know if I have 3 hands to put them on. But on the other hand, I have mixed feelings because I'm just not sure it's right to pull Mark Driscoll up. Like if you want to make a podcast about this whole topic in general and maybe highlight a few different people with these, fine. But I'm just not sure that it's right to just attack one guy incessantly. And just kind of bludgeon the guy, you know, like I'm sure there's a lot of great things that Mark Driscoll had, and they bring that up. So when I'll talk with my friends, they'll say, well, Peyton, they do bring that up. They bring up people got saved. They bring this up. And I always say, yes, but it's with a spin and caveat. And please understand, I in no way am, saying that Mark Driscoll, you know, that he was right or, you know, whatever. I wasn't there. The people that were there seemed to have a really good take on it. I'm just not sure that, you know, it wasn't kind of dealt with there. And then people say, oh, but he's up to his tricks again in Arizona. Maybe. I mean, some guy came out, some disgruntled employee said something. Maybe. I just for any of you that have been in leadership, you could find any one of a handful of people that are cheesed off at you. Mark Driscoll was proud and abusive. Okay. He stepped down. He said he was sorry. That's cool. So I don't mind bringing that up. I don't mind using as exhibit A. But we have, you know, maybe just not the whole show on one guy's failure. I just not sure how I feel about that. And more because I'm not sure how Jesus feels about that. I'm just not sure that, that's especially without the redemption at the end. Like when the Bible talks about the people like Peter and those, it talks about the redemption. Of course, we hear Judas, the son of perdition. And Jesus goes, well, he was doomed to destruction, but that's different, right? Like that's a guy that Jesus is kind of saying that we ain't going to see that guy in heaven, right? So I don't know, man. I just got mixed feelings. But anyways, without jousting those windmills, because I haven't landed on where I listen to it. Excuse me. Like a car wreck, I can't look away. I listen to it. I'm actually super impressed by it. I think it's super. How many
episodes was it?
Right now they're up to 9. So, so let me just be really clear. Like I would advertise my book on it. Actually, I reached out to him and said, hey, I'll put church plantology on there. Again, I have mixed feelings. So, I'm not sure that I should have, being that the case, but I'm in book whore mode. Like I have to sell my book. I have to flog it. So, hey, I got an interview with Caesar K tomorrow. So that'll be
What are you
fun.
Promoting your book on his podcast?
I am.
Nice.
I am. Yeah. Now you know why we had him on our podcast.
He's not going to like us anymore once Church Planter Podcast is done. He can be like, oh, forget those two. Yeah. Those two jokers. They're out of here.
Yeah, but he might come over to my new podcast, right?
Are you
Church
inviting Caesar and not me?
No, well, he might come over there. You can come as a guest too.
I don't
Church
want to
Plantology podcast.
I want to come.
So, did you see that comment on Facebook? You mentioned something about comments. I only saw one, and that was from Bill, who once won our comment contest because he has the best comments. And he goes, "Well, if the Church Planter podcast is split in ways and experiencing a breakup, I'm going with Pete."
Did he really?
Yeah. And I put, Pete and I already talked about this. He's keeping the kids. I'm keeping all the money.
Dude, that's so funny. That's what I tell Jamie all the time. If we split up, you're taking the kids.
I want the money. You take the kids.
That's so bad. Oh my gosh. It's so bad.
But some of the kids might decide they want to come over to my podcast. So that does.
No, I got a comment on for my From Concealment podcast. We've got a Telegram group because it's uncensored. Unlike we've already been censored on Facebook. Like we can't live stream our podcast or anything anymore.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. And so anyway, I don't know who this person is, but someone put in there, I'm sad Church Planter Podcast may be dying, but if I have to choose another podcast to follow for the next 8 years, it'd be the From Concealment podcast. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, it's a second person that said
well,
that.
And then I got another one. I got a text from my pastor. He's like, just when I start to listen to the podcast again, you're ending it. I'm like, hey, the catalog is there. Go back.
450 episodes. Let me tell you, you do something 450 times, it might be time for you to try something else.
It might be time to experiment a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, step out, mix it up.
Go to Who Kills Mar Hills.
And I will tell you, Who Killed the Church Planter? That was supposed to be our title.
There's the next podcast. Who Killed the Church Planter podcast?
Okay. For our last podcast, we need to do that as a documentary. We need to do it like in the style of Who Killed Mars Hill. We need to do, and we'll play clips of ourselves interspersed. Except
the problem is that would require work on our part to go get.
But I'm hiring an employee. New Breed's hiring an employee, right?
I didn't know that.
Oh, I'll tell you more about that after the podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's juicy.
Okay.
You hear who I'm hiring.
Well, no, I know who you're hiring.
Don't say it out loud.
No, but it's who I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You already said that on this podcast.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess you'd have to go back and listen.
On this episode.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. Well, the cat's out of the bag then. So here's the thing. Going into our, now that I've undermined everything I'm about to say. No, we didn't. Here's the thing. Looking at that rise and fall of Mars Hill, it raises the issue of celebrity culture, and it basically gives the argument that this is part of what's wrong with us. And I think there's a certain degree in which you can take that and say yes, because obviously anytime you go with, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, Paul says that you've become carnal. But I think the context of that verse is sectarianism. I don't think it's that somebody is maybe famous, because later in the same book, in Corinthians chapter 8, Paul says, along with Titus, we're sending the brother who is praised by all the churches for his work in the gospel. Now, another version says famous among all the churches. And it means the same thing. He's heralded, famous, praised for his work in the gospel. Now, many scholars anticipate that this is actually Apollos, because, Paul even says, I planted, Apollos watered, and, God gave the increase. So here's the deal. Apollos was someone who was well known for coming behind Paul and preaching the gospel and seeing masses saved. That is, in fact, what happened every time Paul left. When he left Ephesus, it happened. When he left Corinth, it happened. Everywhere Paul went, Apollos came. And so I believe what he's speaking about is actually Apollos, but that's debatable. Maybe he's talking about Timothy. Maybe he's talking about someone we don't know because he's not talked about in the letters. Maybe it's Luke. Who knows? But what we do know is that Paul doesn't put on this a caveat. Like, he doesn't say that this is bad. He continues in verse 19. More than that, this brother was chosen by the churches to accompany us with the offering, the gracious gift we administer. So this guy's popular, right? He's loved, he's popular. To a certain degree, he has a measure of celebrity. So I want to back up and talk today a little bit about celebrity and what was particularly on the Josh Harris one. They mentioned celebrity culture is what broke Josh Harris. So on the bonus
Who's
episode,
Josh Harris? I don't know who that is.
He was the one that wrote a book. He was a young kid. He was a teenager, homeschooled, and wrote a book called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. He then went on to move up with C.J. Mahaney and some of the reform circles. He rubbed shoulders with Mark Driscoll, was a bit of a stalwart in reform culture. And I remember finding out he was reformed and being like, oh, wow, man, that's cool, because I was reformed at the time. And thinking how cool that was. And but anyways, recently he came out and he did an interview with Mike Cosper for The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, which he just talks about how he's deconstructing his faith. Now, what I appreciated was Mike really gave him a pastoral leading and guiding through that conversation. Number one, he let Josh just say what he had to say without attacking him. And at one point he jokes and says, now he's slipping into pastor mode here. Forgive me. And Josh is like, no, that's cool. Like, Josh Harris is a nice dude, just a super gracious, nice person. So I've got a lot of respect for Josh, but he starts off in the beginning. He actually says, look, I just got really hurt. And that started the whole thing. And that's often the case with people that go into, it usually is not some theological point. He brings out, he says it wasn't that. But it was just all this emotional stuff that caused me to upend and to reevaluate and to distrust everything. And so when he wrote that book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, it was very much a stimulus for purity culture, which now has a bad name. But back in the day, it was people courting, trying not to have sex before marriage. And he jokingly says on the podcast, I was taught that was the worst thing that could ever happen. Well, I get why that would be of concern. I mean, unwanted pregnancies, teen mothers. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that probably, your sexual purity. Paul says, hey, every other sin you commit outside your body. This one, sexual sin, is different. So I would kind of, give the little caveat there that, hey, purity culture in the church, was a little lopsided. It really was. I mean, Andrew and I, before Josh Harris, our generation had Elizabeth Elliot. And as cool as that lady was, she wrote a book called Passion and Purity, and it made you almost afraid of romance. It made everything very Spartan-esque. And your approach, Andrew and I have looked at each other a number of times and said, hey, we probably missed out on some stuff because we were trying so hard to behave. We made it to the altar as virgins with each other. Had some hot and heavy nights, but nothing that got us into too much trouble. But we've often come away and said, were we more helped than harmed? And I think we've come to the conclusion we were more helped, but there's a little bit that we missed out on. I would have liked a more balanced approach, which I think if we did approach that, we would be standing on the shoulders of some people in purity culture. See, what happens is when things go out of popularity, when the fad or the trend dies, within Christianity, we have this tendency to go pendulum swing the other way. Oh, and then somebody else who maybe says, well, hold on, wasn't there some? No, like you can't give any balanced view on any of that. There was some helpful stuff in that, but it was kind of like when Promise Keepers was all the rage, and then afterwards everybody crapped all over it. I never was a Promise Keeper, never went to a Promise Keeper thing, but I think some of the intentionality of that was kind of cool. Now, I don't know the ins and outs, so don't come after me for this. I'm really not that familiar with it. I was overseas when it happened. I remember reading a bit and thinking, oh, there might be some good stuff. And then they mixed it with like Republican right-wing, candidates, and it just got wrecked and ruined. But I always look at the intentions. What was the intention? They might have missed some, but that's who Josh Harris was. He comes on there and they pin celebrity culture. They say, this is the problem within the church. This is what this leads to. And I just got to kind of back up because, me, Pete, I love the scripture and I love church history. And I think what we're talking about is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. Celebrity culture is not new. Think about it. Paul talks about this guy. I think it's how you deal with celebrity culture. If celebrity culture is venerated and exonerated and honored and is seen as something to strive for, then it becomes evil, right? Like money's a tool. We know that. But Paul says money's the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. I don't think celebrity culture is a problem. I think the love of celebrity culture is the problem because celebrity is in human nature, right? If you go all the way back, right, we hear these tales of renown, Tolkien. Tolkien's whole thing with Lord of the Rings was based on heroism. And those were the stories, Beowulf. Those were, Alexander the Great. You told these stories. The story of Troy, right? Who was the guy, Achilles, right? In the story of Troy. Brad Pitt, yes. Deeds of renown, right? Acts of heroism. Those are the things that people talk about because they stand out and people become known. Even in the scripture, it talks about men of valor, it talks about David's mighty men became very well known for these things that they did. And these stories got recounted. I don't think there's anything wrong. Yeah. But, David's mighty men were like holy dudes, man. They were the Spirit. It talks about the Spirit come on, I think.
Does it?
Yeah. Yeah, it talks about the Spirit of God coming on some of these dudes. So like when you have like the things like the judges, even Samson, right? Spirit of God comes on Samson. And Samson is a great example of somebody who becomes a celebrity and has a downfall, much like what we're hearing about on this podcast, where he has a great beginning, Spirit's anointing him, and then boom, he crashes and burns and destroys himself. And so you have that in scripture. You also have it in church history. But even Paul talked about it. Like Paul talked about, hey, don't put someone who's a new convert into leadership or they will get puffed up and arrogant. So there's always that danger But I would say that it's always been around, Pete, that celebrity culture is here to stay. What do we do with it, and how do we combat it? So, but first I want to talk a little bit about, going back into church history. Like we have some of the church fathers. They were renowned. They were legendary. Like, people made pilgrimages to go talk to them, right? St. Patrick, St. Anselm, some of these people that lived in the Dark Ages, Luther and the Reformation, and Zwingli and Calvin, and, all of these church history figures that got known, you could say they were celebrity to a certain degree. Whitefield, Wesley, Spurgeon. I mean, the list goes on and on. J. Hudson Taylor. And it's because, again, some of these guys did acts of renown. And so them becoming well known for that is, to a certain degree, unavoidable. When you write or preach something or put content out, it's going to bring a certain degree of fame or celebrity, which is unavoidable. I paused there to let you speak.
I didn't know I was going to get to talk on this podcast.
I'm handing the conch to you. It is now your time to speak, Pete.
Oh, that sounds great, Peyton. What else do you have to say on this topic?
That was fantastic, Pete. That was the best one ever. All right. Hey, towards the end of this thing, you got there. Well, I want to read a little bit about Whitefield and kind of talk about him for a second, because Wesley, obviously, Wesley kind of made it big time, right? I mean, I say made it. He never let himself become rich. He never let himself become super comfortable. He definitely kept himself. I would say he kept his integrity, right? For Wesley, it was less about, what people thought of him and more about what he was doing. He just wanted to get his head down to it. He didn't pay attention to the crowds to a certain degree. But here's a little bit about Whitefield. So when he went to Philadelphia, he attracted 8,000 people, and he took 7 trips during his lifetime, and he traveled 5,000 miles in 1 year, right, up and down the coast of America. In 1740, nearly 30,000 people heard him preach in Boston. Even Ben Franklin writes in his journal that he went to go hear, that he went out of his way to go hear George Whitefield. He was a phenomenon. Now, this is what Whitefield says early on, because towards the end of his life, Whitefield said, look, I built a rope of sand. In other words, I didn't put systems and things into place. And he was saying that about Wesley. When Wesley died, he was like, my followers are a rope of sand. I'm not going to have, what Wesley, because Wesley built a whole movement. But Whitefield had this thing in him where he was like, he said, he quoted, who's the guy that founded the Moravians? Count von Zinzendorf. Preach the gospel, die and be forgotten. That was Whitefield's motto. And he constantly said, let the name of Whitefield perish. Let only the name of Christ remain. And the reason he felt that, let's go back into his history, because what I was going to say is this affects different people differently. I don't think you can, Christian celebrity is just the big bad wolf, that's too easy. That makes something else the problem. The problem is our heart, right? There are certain people who can handle celebrity. I would argue that, because when I worked for Exponential, I worked in the green room, and I would interview all of the platform speakers afterwards. You know who the coolest guy was I ever interviewed?
A guy named Mitchell, Pete Mitchell, I believe.
It was Andy Stanley.
Oh, no kidding.
Way coolest guy ever. Because I remember on this one particular day, everybody was getting all bent out of shape. Not over anything I was saying. It's just, I realized some of these speakers, man, they can be prima donnas, they would be all there was a little bit of haughtiness. I am the important guest here. I am this, let's make this snappy. There was, some of them got offended over the smallest little things. And I just remember being wow, this is a trip, because this isn't even famous. This is Christian famous. And here's Andy Stanley. You can't walk into a Walmart, man. You can't walk into a Barnes & Noble without seeing that dude's face somewhere. Here's a guy that is probably the most famous Bible teacher on the planet. And he was super down to earth. I remember meeting him thinking, he's super cool, super nice dude, super easy to talk to, super lax, super chill, just really respectful. And so here's what this, by the way, Pete, is out of this book. I just want you to see it. Church Plantology. Cha-ching! This is from page 98, don't you know? I need my glasses. It says, George Whitefield confessed that popularity nearly destroyed him as a young man before he learned to crucify it. The tide of popularity began to run very high, he writes in his journal. In a short time, I could no longer walk on foot as usual, but was constrained to go in a coach from place to place to avoid the hosannas of the multitude. They grew quite extravagant in their applauses, and had it not been for my compassionate high priest, popularity would have destroyed me. I used to plead with him to take me by the hand and lead me unhurt through this fiery furnace. He heard my request and gave me to see the vanity of all my commendations but his own. So, and I think Whitefield understood that true success was not people shouting your name and giving you goodies like Nacho Libre. But that experience at a young age where he says, it almost destroyed me. Like, there was something in Whitefield that was repulsed by it. And I would definitely say that over the years, that's been something that I've had as well, that keeps me, I would say keeps me honest. I can remember just going back into my own story a little bit, where I was the golden boy. I was had a church of a couple thousand that was like, hey, we want you to be our next pastor. Holy Spirit spoke to me on the beach, my honeymoon in Barbados, and was like, you're not the guy. You're going to pull out when you get home. And I was like, okay, like, it was weird because I was a shoo-in to be the pastor of that church, and God had given me this preaching gift that excelled my years, but my wisdom and maturity was not caught up to my gifting. And I came back and resigned from the pastoral race, and ended up going to Lloyd Jones's church, going to Wales and joining the pastoral team there. And now I'll tell you, my mindset at the time was, well, of course I'm here. I'm going to be the next Lloyd Jones. I'm going to be the next Spurgeon. Of course, it's right that I'm here. I mean, who else? Who else would be? That was still in my heart. And then when God caused me to intentionally I was accidentally still trying church plant a couple times accidentally, but a couple times intentionally with, different churches, being part of their team. Had helped plant the one out of Lloyd Jones's church, but took that one church, it broke me. And so when I went into actually planning a church that got quite large by Welsh standards, very small by American, like 120, 125 was our biggest. I think we one day had 140 people as like a record in Wales, right? But I wanted no part of it. I wasn't staying. It was pure. I started leaning into team leadership just because I'm like, well, this elders thing has to be real. And I started understanding apostleship and prophetic, and the APES started breaking open to me, and it was so freeing to me. But what I was going to say is, so here I am. I'm in Wales, and I knew that if I came back to America, because you could see it when you're not in it, you can see how much America, what the podcast points out, the rise and fall of Mars Hill, is that Americans are obsessed with celebrity in church circles. British people are not. There's something in a British person that resents that, right? There's this class thing where when you go upper class, all the people at the working class level despise you for it. And if you do the unforgivable sin of rising to the next, you get eaten alive. So if you ever notice, like in British politics, people like Winston Churchill, they enjoy fame and then they just get devoured, right? Kind of like Michael Cheshire said, why we eat our own. The British eat their own, right? So if you ever end up, getting a degree of fame, you can't let it go you have to kind of keep it down. Well, so here I am in Britain, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to go back to America and be a part of that. Like, I love my obscurity. I'm in Wales. My church is a laughable size by American standards, and I freaking love it. I love that I'm more into multiplication anyways, spreading outwards than building upwards. Like, that church is too big, so we broke off chunks and planted 2 more out of it. So that became what became, because it wasn't about me. So getting back to all that, when I came back, I knew that I was supposed to write a book on team leadership to kind of start putting almost like the thin end of the wedge into our celebrity culture obsession in America. But I had this wrestling with God over writing a book, because I knew if I put my name on a book, that's going to a certain degree, that's gonna kind of put my name out there. And I've been really happy going from the golden boy.
That's the entire reason I do the podcast.
Well, this is the thing, Pete, like, to a certain degree, like, we do the podcast and there is a certain degree of notoriety, like there is name recognition, there is all that. But you and I both know we don't do the crap, like the basic things. When you guys hear me say it, like, Pete and I should have a website. We don't have a website. Like, there are many, many things we could have done that would have made this thing like much bigger. And come on, Pete's a marketer. Like, we know how to do things. We know how to work the system, but this was never about that. It was never meant to be this thing that made us famous. It was meant to be, this serves the church planner. If it serves a church planner, great. And if it doesn't, and that's part of the reason, like, we know Smack Talk wouldn't help us grow. We're like, that's okay, because there's church planners out there who are going to listen and just feel like they got a friend for that 20 minutes, feel like they're traveling with someone they can trust, someone who's in ministry, someone that can make them laugh, someone they can sometimes have on when their kids are around. Pete, looking at you.
Oops.
But, to be honest, like, all of that stuff, all of the celebrity, all that stuff, like, it's never going to be big celebrity for us. Like, even if you're famous, like I said, you're Christian famous. So what's the answer? What do you do with it? I think, I've already tipped my hand a bit. The real issue is what you do with that celebrity. So I'll tell you what Jesus did, right? Not just what Whitfield did. Whitfield kind of shunned it. Wesley, however, he leveraged it. Right, Whitfield shunned it, and he couldn't completely shun it, because, like, the Countess of Huntingdon, one of the most powerful women in Britain at that time, would parade him in front of nobles and have him preach to him, A, to get him saved, and B, so they would fund his church, the churches that would be founded after he'd come preach somewhere. So, but anyways, the answer to Jesus, I think, was he turned the crowds away with truth. I love John's gospel where he says, but Jesus came in grace and truth. So there's this balance all throughout John's gospel of grace and truth. Grace, he feeds them the bread. He multiplies the bread to the 5,000. And then he gives them truth. Eat my flesh and drink my blood. I am the bread from heaven. So there's this grace and truth dynamic where, he's doing miracles and showing grace, and he turns to the Pharisees and goes, you're the sons of the devil, right? Like, there's this balance. This is no wimpy Jesus, not just love, like he's a giant teddy bear. Jesus has truth, and he knows he's like the mix of the church planner and the From Concealment podcast, right? There's that grace and truth. He's letting them have it both barrels sometimes. So there's this balance, this mix, but Jesus knew what it was to turn the crowds away. And I think like when he says, eat my flesh, drink my blood, he turns them away. He gets rid of them. He sends them packing. And I think the love of celebrity has to be constantly put under a microscope. You have to keep being willing to sacrifice your Isaac, to sacrifice the idol. So like part of us giving up this podcast, I know what it means. I know it means that, hey, there's one of my platforms gone, right? That's okay, because it's not about building platform. If my publisher talks to me, they think it is about building my platform. But for my soul, it's not. And there have been times, like I remember at one point, Exponential, when it, like probably a year or two before I started working for him, I had a chat with Todd Wilson. He said, hey, we want to make you the face and voice of Exponential. We kind of need a front man. Now, I always told Todd, I think you should be that dude. And he does a very good job at that. But at that time, that was the proposal, like about a year and a half, 2 years, back when you and I were first talking to them. He's like, I want you. And they were going to take this podcast and combine it with Exponential and almost kind of buy us. I mean, that was kind of the deal. And I remember, I was having these rad quiet times again. And I just felt like Jesus just said no. And so I called Todd up and I said, hey, man, I really appreciate the offer, but I've been talking to Jesus a lot. And he says it's not good for my soul right now. And Todd really respected that, because I'm working around Todd. I've noticed like a lot of people jockey for position and kiss his butt. And he's not into that, but I will say this, man, it definitely was, over the years, I keep giving my platform away. Some of you guys won't know this, but the outreach cover that came out with my picture on it, that's the third time they asked. I only said yes this time because I had to flog church plantology because, you feel a certain degree of responsibility with your publisher. Like, yeah, okay. Like you guys put a lot of money, like they really championed the book. Like they put a ton of money into it. I remember my agent being a little shocked. Cha-ching, I gotta say cha-ching. He's like, wow, they really believe in you. They really believe in this project. They're really investing in this. This is cool. And so I've been going after podcasts to promote the work, but I actually believe in the work. And so to a certain degree, look, guys, I think there's that proverb that says, do you know a man that is good in his work or skilled in his labor? That man shall stand before kings, right? I mean, look at Mozart, right? Mozart stood before kings. Why? Because he was a fantastic composer. Will preachers be spread and shared? Will a book that Rick Warren wrote, like Purpose-Driven Life, which was fantastic, will that not be shared out? And is that notoriety a bad thing? Not really. When Jesus rode triumphantly into Jerusalem, Jesus said, I'm going to have this day, right? Now, I think for us, what we always have to do is to make sure that whenever that happens, that we're like John the Baptist, we're deflecting it back to Jesus, right? Where Jesus, John the Baptist just says, follow him now, right? Right after the baptism. And I didn't know this, Pete, but I was reading John, where John didn't know that Jesus was his cousin, right? If you read Luke, but he didn't know that Jesus was the Christ. In John, he says, I did not know it was him until I saw the Spirit fall upon him. For the Lord had said to me, he who you see the Spirit falling like a dove, he is the one you're proclaiming. And I'm like, I've never seen that in all these years, that was a moment. That's why the Holy Spirit fell like a dove. That was from John's spirit. John saw something maybe that nobody else saw, right? Some heard thunder. John heard the voice. So there's John, and he tells everybody, follow him now, which is why John and Andrew go and follow him on that day, because they're like, oh, okay. And they just start going off after him. And that's the thing is I must decrease. He must increase. And if that's your internal operating system, that he's going to decrease or you're going to decrease and he's going to increase, great. But if your internal operating system is, I must increase, he must decrease. Because it can't be the same, right? Like if you increase, Christ is going to decrease unless you flip that like John the Baptist did. And the only way that I know practically to do that is to do what Moses did. Moses was surely, millions of people were following him. Talk about a Twitter account. And Moses, it says he meets with God face to face. And the Bible says he was the humblest man on the face of the planet. That's the only antidote I know, is to just meet regularly with God. Get in the presence of Jesus. It may sound cliche, but I think you would be amazed at how many leaders don't do that and be able to switch it off. And I'll close with this. Radiohead And I put this in church plantology. Cha-ching. Radiohead. So I've got a whole section on the planner's health. I think for us, Pete, right? Like, we've helped church planners. We work with planners. We would agree that one of the things that's very unhelpful is, some guy that breaks his marriage, breaks his brain, breaks his mental health, breaks everything for this success idol or to build the church of dreams. I don't care about that. I'd much rather have someone have a little small intimate group of 15, 20 people and be doing well in their marriage, doing well in their walk with Jesus, maintaining good friendships, maintaining their mental health. So I've got this whole section on the planner's health. During that, I mentioned Radiohead because what a lot of people don't know about Radiohead is that they played in 1 year nearly 300 shows. Wow. When OK Computer. I mean, that's insane. And these weren't like little venues. These were like stadiums they were filling. They were filling the biggest stadiums in every city. And so you probably won't know this, but some of our listeners will know that Radiohead's next album after OK Computer had no guitars on it. And that was because Tom York, the lead singer, he said, when I used to when my head was all tangled, I'd pick up a guitar and I'd play guitar. And that was how I decompressed. That was how I regained my equilibrium or my balance. And he said, the problem is when the thing you turn to becomes the problem, where do you go to find your balance? And ministry can become like that, where, you're meeting with Jesus, you're praying, you're this, but then it becomes a means to an end, right? When the idol of ministry outgrows why you first started doing this thing, then you have nowhere to go anymore. So there's a time at which you just got to ditch it, go on sabbatical, kill it, right? Kill the fatted calf, or grind the sacred cow, the golden calf, grind it into powder. There's something you have to do. Now for Tom York, what he did is he bought a house because he could with cash, just buy a house down in the Devonshire coast, which you've ever seen. There's these huge cliffs overlooking the ocean. And he got this house that had all these glass windows so he could just see because he was at the point of nervous breakdown. He actually kind of cracked up a bit. And all he had in there was a cot to sleep on and this giant grand piano in that room with all the glass overlooking the ocean and the cliffs. And he said, and I just would go in there and play piano. And that's how I regained my equilibrium. And so when that next album comes out, it's more about sound, right? I think the album was Kid A. And it was all about noise and sound and rhythm. And they, fair play, reinvented the music scene at that point. So much music now goes back to one album, but it came out of Tom York going, I just can't pick up a guitar anymore. And you might get to that point where, what would have happened if people around Mark Driscoll had come to him and said, hey, you're not okay right now. People are getting saved, but you need to take a break. Even Jesus got away. You need a sabbatical, or you need, because of team leadership, we got this. No one's going to try to take over the church from you, because paranoia sets in when success becomes honest. Someone else is going to want this. You lose your mind. And at that point, though, how cool would it have been if a guy like that could have, just taken a break, and there's so many people like that where they could have just taken a break and discontinued and hit pause and found their identity back in Jesus. That was a big part of the conversation with Josh Harris. He kept coming back to his identity, that my identity became all this other stuff rather than my identity in Christ. And so for a guy deconstructing his faith who says he's no longer a Christian, he kind of got it. Maybe he does understand Christianity better than he thinks he does. But that's it. That's my piece. Sorry, Pete. I really went off on this one.
Oh, am I allowed to talk now? Oh, I wasn't sure.
Yes, I did not give permission, but
well,
sorry about that.
Let me ask you, when I'm chasing all this fame and everything, how do I keep all of my podcasts and my YouTube videos and my sermons all in one place? Because I don't know how to do that.
Well, Pete, I use sermonboss.com. Sermonboss.com, Pete, because what they do is they help keep everybody on your page so that they don't go away to YouTube. They don't go away to some other, to Apple iTunes. You keep them right there. And they got these plugins that'll keep everybody on the site. So when they're done consuming your content, why, dang it, Pete, they can just go consume some more.
Like a boss.
Like a boss. Yeah, that was good. All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us today for a very special podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones on not the last episode of Church Planner Podcast, not the second to last, but I think the 6th, episode 444. You were here for it, and be here for our next, I can't do math, 5, 6, I don't know. You tell me. But be here for our next ones until our very final episode, Who Killed the Church Planner Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplannermagazine.com.